What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Just Your Bourne podcast. My name is Stephen Wright. I am joined by Mr. Will. How you doing?
Steve, a little nervous here. I'm recording on a Monday evening, and it is Cowboys week here for the Eagles. We got Monday Night Football coming up here in a couple hours.
Yes, that matters for me because I need Jalen Hurts to do good. Well, not good.
Yeah, what are you down by?
Like 11. I don't need a lot. Yeah. It's a pretty low-scoring week for me and my opponent, so I got kind of lucky on that regard. But just 11, I don't think that's too much to ask for out of a rushing quarterback.
No.
So, yeah,
we'll
see.
I'm in a weird spot where I think I've got 4 games that are still to be decided, but I've got 3 of the team. One team I pretty much in hand, and I've got players to go, but the other 3, I don't have anybody playing. I'm rooting against players in basically 3 different matchups. I'm going against Hurts in 1, Dak in 1, and Elliott in 1. So I'm basically rooting for defense.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Like the projections are all that I'll win each of them, relatively handily. But, if any of them go off for way more than their expected, their projected points. But it's I'd always rather be the one with the player rooting for, because you just feel like you're, rooting when you're rooting against players to do stuff. It just seems hopeless at times.
Yeah, and it gets when you're rooting for players not to do things, it's kind of a double-edged sword because, so you're rooting for, if you're rooting for Zeke not to do something, well, if they throw a 30-yard pass to Gallup, Gallup, whatever, he's hurt, but Gallup, that doesn't impact your Zeke play. But now Zeke's a little bit closer to the end zone.
Yeah, exactly.
So it kind of still does.
Defense.
Yeah, for real.
He's rooting for defense the whole time.
For real. So, rivalry on Monday night, you never really know what's going to happen.
Exactly. You kind of throw the records out the window and the anticipated games out the window here when you have a rivalry week. It was interesting. I follow a bunch of the Philly beat writers, and a lot of people are saying this is like the most Eagles fans they've seen at Dallas for a game in years. So I don't know if it's just a renewed, loving the team with a new quarterback with Carson Wentz gone, but apparently there's going to be a lot of green in the stands tonight. So it should be interesting to see if that's truly the case. Yeah,
probably a mixture of a lot of things. They're playing well. You got the excitement with them. A game worth seeing with Dak there. Post-COVID stuff where you can actually go to the game. I'm sure it's a lot of different things.
Yeah, a lot of people wanting to travel a little more.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Yeah, but that's the last game here for week number 3. But we are here to talk about week, I guess you call it 3.5 waivers between week 3 and 4.
Yeah, so we got to touch on all the important positions for the waivers for the week. Go ahead and start with the running backs. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah. Well, we got a couple of big names here. One big injury there to Christian McCaffrey. So 2 names that I think are worth touching on to start there. Chuba Hubbard, 26% owned, and Royce Freeman, 1% owned, should take over. They got Dallas next week, so could be a higher scoring game. Could be some heavy usage. Should be interesting. It sounds like McCaffrey is not going to go on IR, but sounds like he is going to miss several games, so maybe somewhere in that 3 to 4 range. I think is hopeful for a McCaffrey owner, but you got to kind of weigh how much time you're anticipating you're going to get to use either of these running backs.
Yeah, and of the 2, Chuba seems like the guy.
Yeah, I do think there is something to be said about Freeman. I think he's going to get some opportunity as the veteran back there with Chuba, kind of that risk with a rookie as they, play bad, have a fumble, make a couple bonehead plays. The head coach wants to go with the vet. So there's definitely, I think Freeman's worth adding. You don't think you got to spend much for him, but I think he's worth an add to the back of a bench to see what happens.
Yeah, you never know. Sometimes what a coach does immediately after an injury is different than what they would do when they have a week of prep. So
yeah,
it could be one of those situations. Either way, yeah, you're probably at a minimum of 2 weeks with McCaffrey. I'm assuming they think it's possible since they didn't put him on that 3-game IR.
Yes.
So yeah, I guess they think theoretically he could be back, but you're probably looking at 3, like you said. And as we saw with Mike Davis, it doesn't matter who the running back is. They're going to produce there. So he's definitely worth owning. As far as how much fab you want to spend on him, I would assume, if I was a really good team, like a 3-0 team, something like that, I probably wouldn't want to bid on him just because the price, I'd imagine, is going to be pretty high unless I got some tough bye weeks coming up. If you're a team that has to win, like you are 0-3 or 1-2, and the season could get away from you really quickly, I think you pay up quite a bit to get him because, as I just said, Mike Davis was great last year. McCaffrey's always great, and that could be in line for Chuba as well. So I think I'd pay up quite a bit for him if I was in that situation. But I'm not sure I'd pay up if I didn't really need him. What do you think?
Yeah, it's tough because he could get some pretty good usage, but you just don't know how long it's going to be. So, I mean, if you really need a guy, and like you said, maybe you're a 500 team or you're 0-2 and you just need to get some wins immediately, maybe you pay up a little bit. But other than that, I think he's worth owning, but I just don't know that I want to spend all of the fab. You want to save that for, that guy that hopefully Elijah Mitchell becomes, but the guy that you anticipate is going to be able to be the guy for the year. So both of them I think are worth adding. I'm probably not spending a ton. I imagine Freeman you can get for, 1 or 2, whereas Chuba you're probably going to have to spend, I'd say 15, but he'll probably go for more than that.
Yeah, agreed. Again, it all depends on the running back position for some owners. We were just talking about our friend who sent us, well, they didn't send us offers, but inquired with both of us about a running back. I'm sure he's going to pay up if he's got the fab to do it. To plug the hole. So it depends on, who needs to plug a hole and, what their fab habits tend to be.
It's always different, league to league. You said different habits and then, different situations that people have.
Yep. And then another guy that had a really good week based on an injury. I think there's kind of it's more of a cloudy injury situation, but you have Peyton Barber had a big week, taking advantage of Josh Jacobs being down. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong here, Will, but I don't think we have any idea of how long Jacobs is going to be down. I don't think.
No, I think it was questionable that he was even he was possibly going to play. And then was it Friday or Saturday he was out.
Yeah. Which shouldn't be a surprise. This has been his deal this season so far. It's is he going to play week 1? Is he going to play week? He was bound to miss some time eventually. Is he going to turn into another week or not? I don't know. On top of that, he's got the Chargers. I don't know if I really want to play him against the Chargers anyway. Barber, that is. So I think he's someone I would pass on personally. But again, if you're 0-3, you really need a starting running back for this week. You take a shot. He's probably going to cost, given he popped off, over 10%, probably in that same 15% range. But I can't say I'm super interested in him. What about you?
No, I mean, the schedule here, like you said, the Chargers coming up on Monday Night Football. So that could be a little bit of a, pain to worry about. You may not know if you can play him until much closer to kickoff, and you may not have any other options if we're worried about Jacobs. But they have Chicago, Denver, Philly, and the bye. And Chicago, Denver, and Philly have all been fairly good against the run game. So it is going to be interesting. I probably, would throw 10 up fab-wise. Likely not get him, but hey, maybe the rest of the league's thinking the same, and you can kind of sneak an ad there at a lower amount. But I'm not spending too much for him.
Okay, the another running back here, 54% rostered, so he's a little more heavily rostered. We got Zach Moss, had another good week. Definitely some hopes for him this year, and he's shown something. What do you think about
crazy him? After that week 1 where he's inactive and everyone panicked, and he probably got dropped by a lot of people there. And pretty good weeks. I mean, 8 for 26, scores twice, 2 for 8. In the first and week 2, and then last week he had to actually get some pretty good usage. 13 carries for 60 yards, 3 catches for 30 yards. So, 16 total touches, 90 yards, and got in the end zone again. I think he definitely needs to be on a roster because if Singletary gets hurt, you could really be in for a lot of usage. Limited upside with Josh Allen getting a lot of rushing touchdowns as well. So it could, not have all of the goal line work, but I think he's definitely got to be on a roster and, in a good matchup, like this week against Houston, or even against Kansas City in 2 weeks in a likely high scoring game. someone that you could probably flex.
Yeah, agreed. And he's the kind of guy that you want, on a very good offense. That he could have a down week, but still get a good end zone opportunity, and make it worth it. So I agree. He is someone that's pretty high on my list, and unlike the other two, has season long value. The value goes up a lot if Singletary goes down, but he's not relying on an injury like Chuba, Freeman, and Barber are, and so that's a big benefit. But again, unlike them, he's got a high rostership already. So that's gonna be a tough one. So you have to see if he's even available in your league.
Yeah, and moving on, next running back here, Sony Michelle, probably the last one here that I think is a major add. It's tough to really figure out where he's at because he goes up against one of the best defenses against the run in Tampa. You just almost don't run against this team. But he got 20 carries. Obviously, Henderson not playing, but 20 carries, 67 yards. So not a great per carry, but against a great defense, it's good to see him out there working. He got 4 targets for 3 catches. So I think he's definitely worth the ad. Gets Arizona this week, and then a few, then has a schedule opens up a little more after that. But I think he's definitely worth the ad, and I think it's going to come down to Henderson, how long he's out. But I don't know, how much would you bid for Sony?
I don't, and it comes out of this kind of the same conversation. If I needed a win, I would probably pay a fair bit because Arizona's been giving it up on the ground a little bit. So I think I would pay up a fair bit and hope for, 1 or 2 weeks out of them, maybe, 15 to 20%, maybe even more depending on how desperate I was. If I wasn't in that situation, I still think he's worth the ad because, we don't know how long Henderson's going to be out for, and he gets hurt so often. Sony could end up being somebody that has value year long, but I don't think I would. In that situation, like if I didn't really need him, I'm not really willing to pay the 20% for the depth. I don't think.
No.
So yeah, it depends on the situation. But what are you in line with that or?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. If he plays and gets the usage, I think he's definitely usable. You're gonna be able to probably even start him. Definitely flex him, but it's just when Henderson's there, they're gonna run both, and I think they do want to run the ball. I mean, you see them traditionally run the ball. I think you'll see a lot of passes early, but I think you see McVay tends to run the ball a lot more in the second half. So I think there's going to be games where you can use both of them. But yeah, it's going to be tough to really know when you're trying to figure out between Sony and Henderson each week when they're both healthy.
Yeah, that's fair. Last 2 guys that we had put down here was Felton and Stevenson. Do either of them interest you there, Will?
Yeah, some later guys. I think Stevenson, is not a bad just on your bench because James White's going to be out, it seems like, for a little while now. I don't think we have definitive time, but I think he's already listed as doubtful for this week. So really just Damian Harris and Stevenson. So you could see some more usage for Stevenson. And Felton's someone I think is interesting. He's proved to get a lot of work, especially in the passing game. So I think he's someone that wouldn't be bad to throw on your bench as one of those, if one of the 2 guys ahead of him gets hurt. This team runs the ball a ton. So let's say Chubb or Hunt goes down. You're not going to give the other one 40 carries, right? You maybe give them a couple extra carries, but I think Felton would step in and actually be a pretty relevant player. So I think both Stevenson and Felton are guys you're not going to play, but if you can get them for free or next to nothing just to have on the back of your bench and just kind of see how things play out week to week, not a bad stash.
Yeah, great. So let's go ahead and move on to the wide receiver position here. 2 Buffalo Bills with some solid weeks. We had Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley. Are you interested in both? Neither? Or what are you thinking on those guys?
Yeah, definitely interested in both. Full PPR definitely for Beasley. He's a little bit more of a depth play in half or standard. Sanders, I think you definitely can play. I've got him in our league here. Have him on bench. Couldn't pull the trigger and putting him in just based on what I got here. But I think he is definitely worth starting at this point. As long as the Bills aren't going up against a powerhouse defense, I think you're going to be able to play him. You got, as we were saying with Moss, I think they got KC in 2 weeks. Like that could be a super high scoring game, and you want to get as many shots in that game as possible. So I really like Sanders, and Beasley's not a bad depth play to have to plug in for an injury if needed.
Yeah, I agree. It's nice to see Beasley have a good week because I believe his week 1 and 2 weren't great. Kind of your average, kind of like quote unquote PPR guy kind of weeks. So it's nice to see him a good week, but I tend to agree on both accounts there. Joan Rieger, we had him on last week. We don't have any new information. So
I threw him on there as well because they do got Kansas City next week. So the anticipation is that there could be a lot of passing attempts against Kansas City. And he's only 28% owned, so he could be someone that you could flex just because the game script may lead to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Good point. We have Tim Patrick, who had already seen a little bit of a boost from Jerry Jeudy. Now Hamler is going down. Still only 23% owned. I'm kind of surprised about that. He's definitely been usable, and people know the name because he was usable last year. And, I forget if it was the year before that or 2 years before that, but he's a name that keeps popping up. Are you interested in Patrick?
Yeah. I mean, with Hamler going down, I think you have to be. I mean, they're going to use the running game a lot. Sutton is clearly the number one, and they're using Fant. But with all the other receivers around him going down, I think Patrick's definitely someone that's got to be owned, and he's possibly someone you can flex, here until we get, until Jerry Jeudy comes back. But even if he does come back, I mean, that was it a high ankle sprain, if I remember correctly?
Yes, I believe so.
It was definitely an injury that I recall being one that, it's not season ending, but sometimes it might as well be. It's a guy that's in and out of lineups the rest of the year because of that, and Hamler's done for the year, so I think you're going to be able to use Tim Patrick for the next few weeks, and there's a chance you might be able to use him as the wide receiver 2 on that team the rest of the year. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. He is a solid guy. He's a good flex guy to have, a good depth guy if you are, swimming in good players. So overall, I don't, it doesn't matter my situation, as we talked about with the running backs. Like, I want him no matter what. And I don't think, if he's not rostered in your league, I don't think the Hamler news is going to get him rostered. So I don't think you really have to spend a lot to get him either. But him aside, somebody you will probably have to pay up for. He's rostered in 51% of leagues. That's Christian Kirk. Another really good week out of him. What do you think of Kirk? Are you willing to pay up?
Yeah, I think he's kind of proven himself as the number 2 receiver on the team. There's going to be weeks where it's Rondell Moore. There's going to be weeks where AJ Green gets in the end zone, but you see another 8 targets this week for Christian Kirk, 7 catches, 100 yards. He's a guy that has to be rostered, and you're probably going to be able to flex him pretty routinely, knowing that there may be a couple weeks where you get, a dud week, like last week, 4 for 3 and 65 yards, but you're going to be able to get pretty solid usage out of him. So I think he needs to be added, and I don't like to spend up for receivers, but I don't mind spending closer to 10 for him.
Yeah, agreed. He seems like he's going to have year-long value. Another interesting guy, back from the dead, Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah, I wanted to see what you thought about him, man. He had a huge week, and he's going to be one of those guys that's up and down. But 5 targets, 3 catches, 120 yards, and a touchdown. So that's the week that you get out of him when it's a good week.
Yeah, it's weird. There were like 2 or 3 bombs to him. The one connected, the other 1 or 2 missed. So he almost had a really big week. With that in mind, I mean, I guess I would roster him. It depends on the depth and what I needed and whatnot.
Yeah.
I guess I'd roster him. He's definitely somebody where you look in the matchup, say, you know what, I'm not, this could be a tough week. I need to take an upside shot on someone. And if the Rams have, a favorable matchup, you throw him in there. He's definitely not someone, that I'm going to say you can rely on week in and week out. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, like if you got injuries, you maybe have like a depth play where you're saying, do I want a safe option like Cole Beasley or do I want a boom option like Deshaun Jackson, right? Not a bad kind of pairing of a upside and a high floor guy.
Yep, absolutely. And then
finally, 2 New England receivers here.
Yeah, we got Jacoby Myers and Kendrick Bourne. Myers rostered 58% of leagues, Bourne only in 1%. I think that's about fair. I think Bourne's going to be the same kind of guy that we saw in San Francisco. He's going to have weeks where he's fantasy relevant and pretty good, and then weeks where he's just nothing. And it's going to depend on if he catches a touchdown or not.
Yeah. And there must have been some, I guess, a lot of people cutting Jacoby Myers because only 58% owned is intriguing. I mean, 9 targets, 6 targets, and then 14 targets. So he seems like he is the target hog on this team. I want to say he's only like 24 or 25, so he's got to be rostered. It's maybe standard. It's not as valuable, but half point, full point, he's going to get volume. And I think he's someone that is, damn near a starter at this point every week. At the very least, a great depth play.
Yeah, absolutely agreed.
Yeah, and one bonus. I know he is starting to practice now. Check your waivers for Rashad Bateman. If he's still out there, he's someone that you may not be able to use this week or next week, but he was IR eligible for leagues that have that. Anyone that's not, he's probably going to be added in the next week or two. So if you have an extra bench spot, add him this week before he gets in the lineup. I think it's questionable for play this week. I think he can practice, but I don't know if he's eligible to actually play until week 5.
Yeah, good call out. So yeah, maybe not. You can add him this week if you got the depth, or roll the dice and wait another week and see what happens.
Yeah,
don't have to bid on him, I'm sure, but yeah, good call out. Looking ahead at our tight ends here, Will, we got Jared Cook.
Seems to always be on this list.
Yeah, maybe. He kind of our Logan Thomas of last year, except he hasn't. Had a good week 1 and a week 2 and 3 have been kind of meh. So he's got Vegas this week. Do you have interest in Mr. Cook there if you need tight end help?
Yeah, I think if you need tight end help, he's not a bad shot to take. Compared to some of the guys out there. You have your top 6. Other than that, you're just hoping for a touchdown. And the first few weeks, most of those touchdowns for this team have gone to Mike Williams, which I think a lot of people who have been on his hype train or his bandwagon are happy to finally see him getting some consistent success. But I think a lot of the hype for Jared Cook was that Mike Williams can't stay healthy, so they need a second option. If it's not Mike Williams, who's it going to be? So I think he's still worth rostering. He's someone that could get in the end zone any week with Herbert in a decently high-powered offense. But yeah, there's this list probably has a couple of other guys that are maybe a little more intriguing.
Yeah, I think there's probably only one that I find him more intriguing. I guess we'll talk to him. Well, we could jump to him now. Mike Gesicki got a lot of targets with Brissett in there.
I think he was the highest targeted receiver tight end.
Yeah, so
this week,
while Tua is out, if you need to plug that hole where the guy you might be able to just leave in that spot week in and week out. I think Gesicki's your guy. Now he's rostering 56% of leagues, so real 50-50 shot whether he's out there for you or not. But that would probably be my ad if I had to pull the trigger on somebody. Is that who you would be looking at, or is there somebody else that you like?
Yeah, I'd probably be looking at him or Cook, but I think Conklin is interesting. I wasn't huge on him coming into the season, but he got 8 targets, 7 catches, 70 yards, and got in the end zone. Yeah, I don't think you can count on a touchdown for him. I mean, you can't count a touchdown on anybody any week, but it's someone that I think is going to get some targets. It's him and Osborne as kind of that third receiving option. I guess you're going to have Cook in there, but I think he's definitely someone that's worth taking a shot on. If these other options aren't available, maybe you're, kind of the one team that's kind of out of it with tight ends. Not a bad guy to plug in, and they got Cleveland this week, so could be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, and that's kind of my thought on him as well. I mean, he's going to be really hard to rely on. There's going to be some weeks where it's him, some weeks where it's Osborne, some weeks where it's neither, and it's more of a run game focused team. So that makes him very tough to rely on. Similar to Dawson Knox, he had a big week this week, and he'll always be capable of that given that he plays with Buffalo. But he's another one that you're just not going to be able to predict. So, that's kind of the tight end landscape. Sometimes you're going to have to look at the matchups. Knox has Houston, so that's a good roll of the dice this week. But once you get down to that level of tight end, it's kind of hard to predict, right?
Yeah, it's really hard to predict. So I mean, Knox, was targeted there, but he's going to be another one of those guys that certain weeks he has relevancy, other weeks he's 3 targets and doesn't get a catch. So kind of tough. And this is, the game you play if you don't go pay up for one of those top tight ends. And I think that's something that, most years we haven't been all about that. But this year, I think we were preaching that a lot in the preseason, that get one of those top 3 or one of those next 3. And then I guess even Pitts owners are probably not too thrilled, but those top 5 are the ones that you're really banking on.
Yep, absolutely. And they're going to pivot over to the quarterback position here for a streamer for week 4. Well, let's see, 1 or 2 of these guys that you like. We have Justin Fields versus Detroit, Heineke at Atlanta, Winston versus the Giants, or Sam Darnold at Dallas. Yeah,
I think Darnold sticks out the most. I like the matchup and the team weapons. He's looked good. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, he had to do a little bit more without McCaffrey there, and he put up some pretty good numbers. And I think he's going to have to throw, but that Carolina defense has played well as well, so that could be an interesting test for them against Dallas next week. If it's not him, then I'm looking at Fields. He didn't have a great debut, a couple of good plays. I was reading that he had 68 passing yards, but he also got sacked 9 times for negative 67 passing yards. So he had 1 net passing yard because of the sacks, which is interesting. I don't know if that goes against you from a fantasy standpoint, but from like a net passing yards, his debut was a 1 passing yard debut. But I think he'll have a little bit easier sledding, not having to go against that. There's 2 pass rushers in Cleveland coming up here at home against Detroit. So I think he's someone I wouldn't mind rolling the dice on again if you really need someone here. What about you?
Definitely a line on Darnold. He's my top pick here. He has looked good. He looked good without McCaffrey. Something about this system, man. Teddy was good. McCaffrey was good. Mike Davis was good. Darnold's good. Chuba would be good. I mean, something about this.
Maybe that just means Matt Rule's good.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But Darnold's my top pick. I think I differ with you in the second one. I think I'd rather have Heineke. He just...
Good matchup.
Yeah, it's a good matchup. He looked pretty good. We've seen some good things from him in the past. Again, that's a little bit my hesitation with trusting rookies sometimes. But nothing against Fields. Like you said, your argument was right. He's got a great, better matchup. But I'm just going to trust Heineke a little bit more. But it also does depend, on my situation. If I need an upside, it's probably Fields, where I think Heineke's probably safer. But that's quarterbacks. Finally, we got our defensive streamers here. Will, let's hear it again. 1 or 2 that you like here. We got the Bills versus Detroit. We have the Saints versus the Giants. We have the Titans at the Jets, the Bengals versus Jaguars, and the Colts at Miami.
Yeah, and that's Bears versus Detroit.
Oh, sorry, what did I say?
Yeah, you said Bills.
Oh,
both good defenses. Both guys I think you would want to start against Detroit. So
yeah, for sure.
I think that's probably my top pick, Bears against Detroit. Titans, they're not a great defense, but the Jets have not looked good, so that's not a bad one either. But I think Bears versus Detroit would be my top pick here.
Yeah, I think Bears versus Detroit would be my top as well. Saints probably second. They're all pretty good options, honestly. But yeah, probably Bears for me as well.
Yeah, solid week for streaming defenses.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, that is going to wrap up the Waivers show. Tune in on Thursday for our Start Sit episode. Until then, trust your board.